Good evening. Thank you so much, Shiv, Urvashi, Gauri, everyone that is participating in this extraordinary global gathering training young leaders. When you come to a room of over 150 young men and women who are dedicated to be leaders and caring for humanity, it's incredible what you can do together when people are not cynical and they're already here to learn how to serve. You can accomplish in this room, in teaching about leadership and sharing ideas, what it would take somebody else months or years. Think about this when you're trying to inspire somebody or educate someone. There was an argument between the sun and the wind. You may have heard this. And the sun said, "I'm the most powerful," and the wind said, "I'm the most powerful." And they looked at a couple also standing outside, arguing, talking to each other, and the sun said, the wind said, "You see that lady? I can get her to take off her coat." And he started blowing the wind and blowing and blowing, and the more he blew, the more the lady held on to her coat. And then the sun said, "Let me do my job," and started spreading warmth and shining light on that lady, and very quickly she removed her coat. When you want to change somebody, there's a hurricane out there that always makes people cling to themselves and their ideas. It's very hard to get people to always be open to the sunshine. All of you have already been embraced by the ideas of leadership. And what's beautiful about the values, if we talk about leadership, where are you leading me to? We all know that there's very bad leaders that can take us to very bad places. What is positive leadership? So before leadership, you need to be educated. But the same thing, if I have information, who said that that education is something that I want in order to be a better person, to lead? So it goes back to our roots of our values. Think about the time that we live in right now. We live in the most extraordinary time in all of human history. We live in a time where we have the greatest advances of science, technology, medicine, global communications, and yet we still see so many problems in the world that are plaguing humanity. But what has been the timeless thread that has not changed were the common values that keeps society strong. So when I think about the leadership, what is it that I can share with you? Let me share a few of the things that I was taught that inspired me, and I hope that you'll be able to go away with those ideas in your mind and maybe share it with others. So I'm a child of American parents who were raised right after the Holocaust in the United States, in the European Holocaust for the Jewish people, but raised in America. And I was raised with a very strong Jewish identity, focusing on my community and rebuilding our people. But the core values are ones that transcend. It doesn't matter which community you belong to or which nation, they belong to all of humanity. And I had a teacher, and his name was Rabbi Schneerson, and his vision was rebuild your community, take care of anyone who's out of the place, and bring them back to be of service and help every person in need. And one of his very important points was, if you see something that is wrong in the world, you should know that it's a privilege. God gave you a gift to be able to fix a problem in the world. And that means there's work to do. And if you only see ugliness and bad, then you have a problem. You need to fix yourself. 5 years ago, there was the terrible, tragic attack in Mumbai. Terrorists came from Karachi and invaded this country and targeted the iconic hotels and also a small Jewish center that happened to be part of the network of the communities that I build and I work with, Chabad. And these terrorists didn't care which hotel or which victims, they killed mercilessly people. And the whole world watched. It was Thanksgiving in America, and everyone was watching this terrible hostage situation going on. And yet, in the midst of this terrible evil, something extraordinary happened. There was an Indian woman by the name of Sandra Samuel. She rescued a 2-year-old boy in the rabbi and his wife's house and risked her own life to save a child. The boy's parents, the rabbi and his wife, were murdered, but little Moshe was saved by someone of another faith, but of the same values. And all of India celebrated. In the depths of the pain and suffering, we found a silver lining of who do we want to honor in society. Let's not focus on the terrorists. We know that there's evil in the world. Let's celebrate the heroes that can lift and risk their own life to save a baby. If you're a diamond merchant and you walk into a room and someone says, show me your goods, and it's someone who could pay, and you say, oh, I don't have any goods on me, you're not going to be able to do business. If you're in whatever profession you're in, when someone asks you for the goods, you have it on you. If you're a leader, you have to have the goods in your pocket. You need to have on-the-spot inspiration, stories, ideas that can influence and inspire other people. So I started in my own life to realize that responsibility, that whatever situation I'm in, I cannot just be a passive observer. We need to see how can we influence others. And that story of Sandra sticks with me as a reminder to the favorite story in the Bible that I study, that we study, that sends the same message. There's a story of little Moses, the future leader of the Jewish people, the emancipator of the slaves, the Hebrew slaves. He was a little boy that was going to be executed because all boys had to be executed. And his sister saved him by putting him in the river, right? And the daughter of Pharaoh, so the dictator's daughter, all boys have to be executed, and she's standing on the side of the river, and she sees a little basket of a little boy. And what does she do? It says she sticks out her arm to save that baby. Now think about the image. She's risking her own life because her father said you can't do this, but she sees a little baby that needs to be saved. She sticks out her arm and she can't reach the baby. A miracle happens and her hand extends and she saves the child. And we all know what happened as a result of saving that little boy. I look at this and say, what really happened? Did her hand actually extend? I say, this is a story for all of us leaders. When you see someone suffering right in front of you, but you say, it's too far, I can't reach. Extend your hand. Do what you can do physically, materially with your hand, and let God take care of the rest. But never say, I won't stick out my hand. Sandra stuck out her hand, not 2,000 years ago, in 2008, and she saved that child's life. It's this mindset that if you are a leader, it's an obligation that you and every single person in this room has to find a way to make the world a better place. After I was in Mumbai, I realized, I said, we're doing so much for our community. Slumdog Millionaire came out, the movie. And I said, I want to see an actual slum. And someone coming from the Western world, going into a slum, I could not believe the inequality that I faced in front of me. I suddenly said, I don't believe what we say, that all human beings are created equal in the image of God, because they're not being treated equally. It's beyond what we can comprehend. They're being treated not as human beings. And what am I going to do about it? And I prayed very strongly that as much as I want to help my people, it's my duty to help humanity. And something incredible happened. I gave a speech and talked about this, our responsibility to humanity. And a man came over to me and he said, I'll give you $1 million, but it can't go to rebuild your Jewish center. It has to go for the most impoverished kids in Mumbai. And I said, that's exactly what I've been praying for. And that started a journey of being able to go and find the biggest inequities in society and saying, what difference can I make? How can I make a difference and bridge the gap between what I have and what others don't? I really have a headache now after all the sessions that we had in the other room, upstairs and downstairs, and I went around from groups. I can't believe that when there's a saying, out of sight, out of mind, I could not believe what the problems that you guys are trying to tackle pale into the issues that in America they're worried about. When someone tells me there's 50% of the population doesn't have, not only do they not have access to sanitation, even if they had it, they wouldn't use it. That means that there's a gap that in America, what are we fighting about? What are we arguing about? There's so much need here, and the responsibility is so important, and the stakes are so high. Yet, the question is, can we find the solution to the problem? And it goes back to the values. When I walk in the room, when you walk into the room, you need to have some kind of, like if I see a man with a turban and a beard, I know that they're Sikh. What are the characteristics that I can know that this person is a leader? When you're a leader, it means that I am open to helping someone in need. Without question, I don't care what kind of mood you're in today. Well, if I angle it right in a business, it all depends on the person's mood. A leader can never not be in the mood of change. They say when you knock on someone's door, you have to take 3 steps back. And then they invite you inside. A leader always has to have an open door policy. You have to look around and say, what can I learn from every situation in every place? And say, this is something, because otherwise God wouldn't have let you heard or know about that problem. Because if you know about it, there's somewhere in your world that you can help make a difference. So I'm going to give you some examples of how you can change your mindset and then start thinking about how do you apply that every single day of your life. So let me ask you a question about language. You know, we all go on diets, and we have books and videos and websites about how many people need to, lose weight and have a regimen diet. Did you ever hear about a language diet? I'm going on a fast that this week I will not say any negative words. I will not use language that is actually destructive. We all know the power. A wise person has to be very careful with their language, because if we say a wrong word that's misunderstood, we can take ignorant people and they'll do terrible things, even if you didn't mean it. Every word that comes out of your mouth has to be calculated and positive. So I ask this question to children in classrooms. What is that word for someone who always wants everything for themselves? They have toys, they have games, they have food, they always grab for themselves. What is that word? What are they? They're selfish. All the kids know the answer. I ask this question, what is the name, what is the word for a child who always has something and says, I want the other person to have it, and gives and gives? What is that word? Either one. Most little kids do not know the word selfless. They all know the word selfish. Why? Why are we raised in a society that only focuses on the negative, but we're not teaching them to think about using positive words? Think about the word life, right? Has so much energy, vitality. Should we be using the word death and died? So my teacher, again, Rabbi Schneerson, would never use a negative word in his language. So he said, don't use the word deadline because it has a negative word. Think about the word due date. It's a very meaning of it's giving birth. I do not let my kids, now they do it on their own. Don't say the battery, the iPad died. Every second it's died. My phone is dying. Why do we bring that word into our life? The minute we say, I need to recharge it, your mind is also starting to recharge. And if you think about, I want you to think about words that are toxic in your life, and you remove it. And start replacing it with positive words. People will start gathering around you. People will see you as a positive person. It's the language you speak. It's the encouragement you give to others. It's the way you'll uplift everybody around you. The words that we use have to be transformative, and you have to have your favorite words. If you asked any of my 5 kids, what is daddy's favorite word? They'll say the Hebrew word tochendik, which I'm very proud that they recognize. It means content, purposeful. That daddy doesn't like that you just watch a movie or a video or a game that has no meaning or it has something negative. What did you learn from it is what I want to know. My son came home from school. He's 11 years old. He said, Dad, I'm so excited. I heard from my teacher in vocabulary class, he explained a word that you always say. I said, what was it? He said, he explained the word inspired. What does inspired mean? Think for a second what the word inspired means. He said his teacher said it means to be filled with a sense of purpose. I thought that was an amazing thing. If you're filled with a sense of purpose, then you know your goals, you know your values, and nothing can stop you if you're a dedicated person to solving the world's problems. And let me say this. I was asked by Tara, how do you sum up, what is the message of how I want to live my life? We live in the most extraordinary time. In our lifetime, we can transform the world and solve all the biggest problems from poverty, global health. It's in our hands. And yet, we all are given every single day, in America we would say $84,600. $84,600 a day would be not so many rupees, only like $2,000. But imagine if you were given 1,000 bills, 86,400 bills of 1,000 rupees. And you had only one day to spend it, every single day. That's the time that we're given. That's how many seconds there are in a day. How would you use your time? So time is the most powerful thing we have. One person can use it to sit on the beach and drink a martini, and somebody else can use it to create a curriculum or create an app that's educating kids or create a Red Nose Day that's going to help bridge the inequities in the world, or a scientist finding a cure for a disease. How do you fill your time? We already know that all the solutions in the world, we're able to solve the problems. Why aren't we doing it? And that is what we, the young people, have to activate, is that we're not going to rest until in our lifetime we reach these goals. Because the solutions are at hand. It's only a question of who in this room can help make that happen. So let me ask you to think about a few ideas about learning from situations. That once you learn it and you say, I can make a difference, your whole life will start to change. So think about, let me ask a question. What do you learn when you put your socks on? Do you have a lesson? What do you mean? I'll just put my socks on. But what if you thought of it like this? Your feet, the lowest part of our body, has a heel. When you lift up the heel, what happens? You lift up the entire body. If we think about the opportunity of helping the people at the most desperate, furthest place in the world, if we lift up them from the bottom, then everybody benefits. If the top only lifts the top, it's only good for the people on the top. When you put on your socks, think, what can I do today for somebody that has the most inequity? When you have a struggle or an obstacle, in order to go up a flight of stairs, you have to step down in order to go up. Every time you're going up a flight of stairs, think about the power of a setback in order to go higher. Because you cannot go up the stairs just climbing up. You need to go down in order to go up. And suddenly this will trigger a reminder in your brain when you have those kinds of experiences. Unfortunately, television, media, they send us so many horrible messages. How do you transform that into something positive? What can you learn from a thief? Give me Give me 5 ideas what you can learn from a thief. Raise your hand. Tell me something that you can learn from a thief. Yes. What? Okay, there's a lot of planning that goes into their scheme. Okay, it's not my favorite idea. To be polite. Okay. Absolutely. They're very focused on their mission. The smallest detail is of the greatest importance. But then what happens? If they fail, they try again and again. It's unbelievable if we just take the negative and turn it into a positive. If we're watching the Olympics, it's not enough to see so many inspirational athletes changing, competing in one. What could we learn from each sport? What do we learn from soccer? The whole world is a globe. We're all one people, one humanity, and we're trying to reach a goal, and yet there are many obstacles along the way. And we have to do what? We have to move fast, not to let the obstacles stand in our way, and no one gives up. You keep kicking the ball, and it has to be a united effort of a team. So I think the most powerful story that we can recognize is that it's your responsibility. The whole world is relying on you. If you cannot change yourself and recognize that you have the potential, then everybody will say, let the other person do it. And I want to finish with a story that reminds me of my own calling of recognizing that when we make mistakes, we can own up to it and recognize, I made a mistake. I was hurtful to someone. I wasn't productive. I failed. And that's how a leader has to keep growing, because no one is perfect. Every human being has their mistakes and iniquities. So I say, revere no one, respect everyone. I was a little boy, and I went to visit New York, and it was a major event in the big synagogue. There's a lot of people from all walks of life that I didn't know. And I saw a man who had a completely deformed face. He had a huge purple lip. It was blown up, his face. He was completely deformed. I was frightened from his look. And I said, what am I going to, how do I react to this man? I never saw a person like this. And I don't know what it was, but in a way that we were with my friends, little kids, instead of having empathy or out of the fear for the way he looked, we mocked him. And we called him a name. We called him Mr. Purplebomb. And we laughed behind his back. And then we went home. And later when we talked about the trip, when you remember Purplebomb, it was one of the characters on the trip. But as you walked away from it, you said, we're trained to be sensitive people. We're trained to be kind. How was I so rude to this man? How was I so cruel even? That's not me. And I said, I have to fix this. But I went back to New York many times. I never saw this man again. And I always in the back of my mind knew that I had that moment where I was in a way cruel to a man who looked so deformed and had such a frightening feature, but yet this was his life. This is his face. After I got married, 20 years later, I was in a hotel in Israel, and at the other end of the lobby, I saw that man. So it's 20 years later. I saw him sitting on a chair, and I realized, oh my God, that's the man I spoke so badly about. I have to go and apologize. So I walk up to him, and I take his hand, and I tell him my name, my story, and I ask him for forgiveness. And he says, I do not forgive you. You did that as a little boy? How could you have been so cruel? I said, I'm sorry, that was when I was a boy and I regret it. And I said, I'm asking you, please, for the sake of my family, my children. He said, I do not forgive you. He said, the same time that you were laughing at me, I had a child. Imagine my son heard you making fun of his father. No, I cannot forgive you for behaving like that. He said, you said it happened in the synagogue of the rabbi that you admire, Rabbi Schneerson. He said, when I was in his synagogue, when he would pray, he would put his hand on his face so nobody would see him. So he wanted to be private. But when that man was in the room, he never would cover his face because he never wanted someone to think that he didn't want to look at that man with the deformed face. He said, the rabbi that you admire had such sensitivity. You're not a good example. And I cannot forgive you. And then I realized he's not going to give in. I said, what can I do? I cannot walk away from here and not get your forgiveness. He looks at me, he says, I purposely said no, but now I'm going to give you forgiveness on a condition. He said that you're going to teach your children, you're going to tell this story again and again, because now you're in a moment that your whole heart is open, your mind is open, that you'll never again be insensitive to somebody else's major disability or their deformity or their inequity. And you're going to teach that to your children and everyone else that you speak to, so you will be able to turn that negative experience into something very positive. I think about learning experiences. If as a leader we have to bring people to a moment where their hearts are open, where their mind and their soul and they'll never forget the experience. It cannot just be another speech. You have to find a moment that, if you know it's a spontaneous moment, that this is an opportunity I could change someone's life forever. And if we keep reminding ourselves every day, all the activities around us, the people that we meet, there's a reason I can be a middleman, like we heard early this morning, a little teaspoon that connects the dots. And we think about, I'm a dedicated person. Somehow you wear it on your sleeve and let everyone know, I am a leader. I'm here to help. And you keep your door open. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, what your faith is, what kind of hat you wear. I think what Shiv is doing, what he proved is, if you have your heart open to helping humanity, and you go out there and say, it doesn't matter, it's for everyone, the world responds. The kindness spreads like wildfire in a good way, and then I believe this room can take these powerful messages and incorporate it into your life until the world in our lifetime will truly be a perfect place. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions and answers. I haven't been following the time. So I know if there's anyone that has any questions, we could do a quick trigger. Yes.
How we can change the mindset of people who are living in a society who know they are doing something wrong to a human being, but at their own part, but they are not ready to accept it.
So the first question I ask is, when someone else is doing something wrong, what am I doing wrong? And if I can fix what I'm doing wrong, then that person will trust that if I'm trying to improve, then when I talk to them, then I have a potential to influence them. But if they see me as someone who doesn't have a good character, then I cannot be a leader. So the first thing is that we need moral leaders. It's not enough to have someone who's a billionaire, amazing speaker, or someone who can, be a good marketer but smoke and mirrors. It has to be someone who has true altruism. When we find people who are spiritual or moral or ethical leaders, I find it very hard to believe that after someone's in their presence that they don't leave in a way to improve. Because if you meet a wise person, his wisdom is not sent into your brain. And if someone is rich and you're in their presence, their money isn't transferred into your pocket. But when you're in front of a kind person who expresses goodness, who shows that he cares about you, even the person, that one will say, okay, I'm ready. So I think the first thing is, how do we change ourselves and be a moral example? And one of the reasons my wife was talking to me, she said, I know that our house life is going to be even better when you come back, because every time I go out publicly and speak about these ideas, I better be a better husband and father at home. How could I come and talk to you about altruism and society, saving the world, if my own house, we can get into arguments? So I'm far from perfect, but it will be better, without a question. My wife says, fly to India. I know that the next 2 weeks, the kids are going to have so much more quality time with you, Dad. Yes?
If I'm not mistaken, that if you save a life, you save the world. Could you just explain that a little bit more? I've heard it, but I don't know what
So-
it means.
In Genesis chapter 23, there's this iconic passage that says all human beings are created in the image of God. And from here we know that the most important thing is not how do we get to heaven and what happens in the afterlife. We live in this world right now, and there's suffering in front of us. How do we turn earth into heaven? The problem is between the East and the West. In the East, they have unbelievable internal character. There's so much depth and spiritual wisdom within the individuals. But they don't even see the poverty. They're not it's very hard for them to turn the physical into a good place. In the West, it's all about the man's body and his strength and his self and his worth, and they lose the soul, they lose the inner side. But a human being is both. They're the inner essence, it's your character and it's your life. And suddenly, the real human being, I don't think anyone has the perfect answer. Humanity is the best of our physical, fixing all the human problems, and our center, our value system. So when it says, save one life, save the world, if we let one person die, then it affects the entire world. Because eventually we're all the same. If one human being is that precious life, then that has to be the most valuable thing in the world. So it's about thinking about the individual, and then you could think about 7 billion, because it always has to come back to one. And just as much as I want to live, that's why I'm going to help somebody else. And that is the measure of saving a life. But it has to be collective. It can't just be about solving a physical problem if you have no purpose. We need everything combined. So if you give someone spiritual life, you're also giving them life. And if you save someone's life for feeding, well, that comes before everything. Thank you.
tGELF, leading the change.